Hello viewers and welcome to yet another commentated match of Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. My name is Mitch and I am the Hive Tyrant. Today I'm honored to present you with the very first week's featured table for War Master Sam Mann's The Black Crusade Online Conquest LCG Competitive League. Today's video we're going to see Zarathur High Sorcerer, played by none other than Davis Kingsley, up against George Tinkham at the top of the screen, who instead is going to be playing Baharroth, our second Eldar faction warlord. Both of our players are assessing their opening hands at present. Note that Davis is going to be our player with the initiative token. He's decided to keep a, per his report, strange opening hand, and it looks as though George is also settled on his as well. In assessing our opening layout of planets, looks like we could see a victory condition very early indeed. Note, the first 4 planets all happen to have green strongpoint type icons. Davis's opening play is going to be a copy of Slaaneish's Temptation put out to planet number 3, which happens to be Iridial, the remove all damage from a target unit planet. And in assessing the remainder of his hand, it's very economy savvy indeed. 2 rogue traders, a Void Pirate, Rotten Plague Bearers for some direct damage, and of course an Infernal Gateway, kind of the Chaos signature version of Drop Pod Assault. We also have the signature event, the Shrine of Warp Flame, so when an enemy unit is destroyed, you exhaust that and you return the topmost Tzeentch card from your discard pile to your hand. Note, Infernal Gateway's Tzeentch card, and Tzeentch's Firestorm is as well. Davis puts out a copy of Rotten Plague Bearers to planet number 1, and on George's side of the table, he put out a copy of the Deathly Web Shrine. It's new as of Decree of Ruin. It's support here for the Eldar faction. It works fabulously well with the 2/6 mobile keyword Baharroth, because after you move a unit you control from one planet to another, you can simply exhaust that support to exhaust a non-elite army unit at the same planet as the unit just moved. So whatever planet it ends up at. In assessing the remainder of George's hand, he's got a couple of Incubus Warriors, 2 command icons, 4/2 with 3 attack value, and he's also got a copy of Bealtan Guardians. George is definitely fond of playing the economy game, and this is certainly something that his opening hand allows him to do. He's also got a promotion for still more command icons, and if he wants to be a bit of a boss and push the first planet, the Warlock Destructor here is a fabulous means of doing so. Davis playing these games, playing these units very early up the board here. We've now got a rogue trader out to planet number 2, and just a little fun aside, this is actually the first game I've ever witnessed Davis play, and of course the first time he's been on my channel. So Sam wanted this as the featured match because these are 2 titanic players, and I'll just be very curious to see how things end up getting resolved. But we now have a copy of Hellion Gang sitting atop planet number 3. It's a 2/2 flyer with a command icon for 2. It's got the flying keyword, but considering that we're going to be seeing Davis piloting Zarathur, that's a very convenient means to work around the flying keyword. We do see that Warlock Destructor show up at planet number 1. Note that Davis has the initiative token, therefore, without the assistance of shielding, we could have Zarathur show up that planet, deal 2 points of damage to the Destructor. The Rotten Plague Bearers could do an additional couple of points of damage, but George does have that 1 copy of the 1 shield icon promotion, and Davis ends up putting out a copy of the Void Pirate now at planet number 4. I guess just assessing our lineup of planets here, planet 1 is Taurus. If you've got fewer units than does your opponent, you can gain 3 resources or draw 3 cards. Planet number 2 is Yavvarn. Both players can put an army unit into play from hand. Note that George has at this point passed, and Davis uses that opportunity to play a rogue trader out to planet number 5. And as we move into the command phase, both of our players are down to 0 resources, whereas Davis has 2 cards in hand, and Grendel has 4 cards. So this could definitely work out for some just fantastic early game tempo for Davis. He's kind of corralling Baharroth to want to trigger a battle at Iridial, but it's a very low value planet considering all it does is heal. Considering there are no currently wounded units, Baharroth could easily go to planet, let's say 4, shut down the card and 2 resources that his opponent would gain, and then move over to Iridial, but that's not a very valuable battle ability to win by any means. So Davis has got a fantastic early game economy, especially considering the presence of that Slaanesha's Temptation. Note that George didn't bother putting out a bunch of economy units at these other planets, presumably because he didn't want to pay a premium for those. In regard to where exactly Davis might show up, Davis does decide to be a little bit bold, go to planet number 1. I could only imagine he's perhaps hoping to draw into some sort of combat unit to perhaps use this Infernal Gateway to kill off that Warlock Destructor, or otherwise just use the Plague Bearers and use Zarathur, take a little bit of damage, and then eventually perhaps whisk it away from Iridial, or just kind of bank on not taking so much damage throughout the entire course of the game that Zarathur ends up risking being bloodied. So this is only going to be, let's see, I think our players are perhaps going in kind of a curious order, but in regard to resolving their command struggles, planet number 1 is going to be a card and a resource for Davis. Planet number 2 is going to be a resource, well, I guess 1 resource for Baharroth. Planet number 3 is going to be a card for George, and planet number 4 is going to be 2 resources and a card for Davis, and then sort of similarly 2 resources and a card for planet number 5. Davis is going to trigger a command phase action. He's using Rotten Plague Bearers to threaten 2 points of damage out to the Warlock Destructor. Considering all the cards that Davis drew this game, he's now got a copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm, which could be pretty reasonably good for dealing off the killing blow to that Warlock Destructor prior to its opportunity to potentially harm Zarathur, or he could use his shields, and then, of course, Tzeentch's Firestorm is a Tzeentch card that we could see recurred through that Shrine of Warpflame, and he also came across a copy of Promise of Glory for a couple of free cultist tokens. The Rotten Plague Bearers did indeed threaten 2 points of damage. We saw Promotion discarded as shield, so therefore the Warlock Destructor is only going to take 1 point. That means Zarathur's not going to be able to clear out that unit should he choose to attack it directly. Baharroth uses mobile to move over to planet number 1, and let's see how exactly Davis is going to be responding. What really sucks for George is he's got this wonderful copy of Gift of Isha sitting in his hand, but he's only got a paltry 1 resource token, so if the Warlock Destructor is killed, he's going to be unfortunately able to trigger and benefit from that effect. Another kind of unfortunate thing is that the Deathly Web Shrine here, note, even though Baharroth triggered this ability, you can only exhaust army units with it. So Davis used the Rotten Plague Bearers as a command phase action so that they could act prior to Baharroth showing up and exhausting them. Because Davis, as a very respected player in our community, of course he's not going to be set up just to, fall victim to some silly trap like that. But Zarathur takes a swing at that Warlock Destructor, and we just simply see it discarded as shields, so I suppose that was erroneously placed at the bottom of George's discard pile, but that doesn't make too much of a difference. And there indeed we see Tzeentch's Firestorm that's going to be for 4 damage, so that is certainly an expensive card, but that is going to be a dead Warlock Destructor, and now good luck to Baharroth trying to win at this planet. Baharroth could try to kill off the Rotten Plague Bears, but should he choose to do so, Davis certainly has an abundance of shield cards in hand, and then as soon as there's the end of a combat round, if Baharroth does not retreat, Davis is going to have the opportunity to attack first for 2, and then the Rotten Plague Bears are going to be able to exhaust themselves to deal out an additional 2 points of Baharroth. So it's looking like Taurus is not going to be able to be won by George, but it all kind of comes down to how exactly bold our Phoenix Lord is going to decide to be. I guess he's risking the possibility for an Infernal Gateway or 2 to be used to, they could drop a Noise Marine Zealot into play, and that could have been 4 points of damage. I guess in the absolute worst possible condition, we could have seen 2 Infernal Gateways result in 2 Noise Marine Zealots, and then that would have been a bloodied Baharroth, but that did not happen. Baharroth took a swing. We saw the discard of that Promise of Glory, so that's a couple cultist tokens that Davis is foregoing, just to make sure that those Rotten Plague Bears did not end up destroyed. So Davis isn't going to have the opportunity to trigger the battle ability of Taurus, but that was a successful defense on his part, and of course he's going to be able to collect one planet type icon of each kind. There are no additional battles to take place, and it looks as though we see our HQ phase resolve. Both of our players draw 4 resources. Accumulate 4 resources, they draw 2 cards. For Davis, we've now got a copy of the signature attachment, Mark of Chaos. You, for free, affix that to an army unit. When that unit leaves play, you can deal 1 point of damage to each enemy unit present at that planet. It's normally great on this copy of Zarathur's Flamers he came across. It also works fantastically well on any number of other units, and alongside Zarathur, that's just an absolutely monumental amount of damage. And considering just how weak all these different units are in George's hand, he's definitely going to be in for a bit of an uphill struggle here. So Bealtan Guardians ends up being played by George, who now possesses our initiative token out to planet number 4. 2 command icons conveniently trumps 1, but the problem here is that Bealtan Guardians cost 2 because that's Slaaneash's Temptation, and on Davis's side of the table, just to stall a little bit to buy him a bit of time, we now see that copy of the signature support the Shrine of Warpflame. Another fantastic stall could be Promotion, being affixed to this rogue trader here, and then we could also potentially see Mark of Chaos for all the more stalling. And if we see any of these Incubus Warriors into play as we are now, they're going to cost George a whopping total of 3 resources. So keep in mind that wherever Baharroth ends up being mobile moved to, the Deathly Web Shrine is going to afford him the chance to exhaust one of those targets. But our new planet number 5 is Planum. It's the planet that allows you to move anywhere you'd like. In case I didn't mention it earlier, planet 4 is Karnath. You can trigger the battle ability of any other planet in play. And planet 3 is Ossus 4, the Steel 1 resource planet. But we've now got that signature army unit fighting at Planum. And now I will just be very curious to see where exactly our players send their warlords. Once again, George is definitely going to be incentivized to try to fight a battle, have Baharroth end up sitting at planet number 2. Note that a copy of Promotion ended up affixed to this Void Pirate, so that's going to be 2 resources and a card, potentially won by Davis, unless we see Baharroth show up at that planet. I guess I'm trying to think where exactly Zarathur might go. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see him go to planet number 1, but that seems like a little too obvious for such a skilled player to do an action like that. That rogue trader is going to be potentially able to win that planet by itself, so George is faced with a very difficult decision. Does he want to forego winning at the first planet, and then that's going to be 2 planet type icons of each kind for Davis, or, does Baharroth want to sit at Iridial? I think we could definitely see Baharroth show up at planet number 2 and then mobile over to planet number 1 if need be, but it seems more prudent to just have Baharroth go to planet 1 and shut off 2 resources there for Davis. But then, of course, if he moves away, then that's going to be his opponent having the ability to win 1 additional battle, and then he's going to be able to win the game. And should Davis end up killing any enemy unit, he'll be able to bring the topmost Tzeentch card back into play, and quite clearly that's going to be the very powerful Tzeentch's Firestorm. So that is pretty ridiculous. I mean, last turn we saw 3 resources equate to 4 damage. Looks like Zarathur shows up to planet 4, so Davis is just definitely going the economy game. Zarathur shows up to block off that Bealtan Guardians, and very interestingly, we see Baharroth arrive to shut off the card bonus for the Void Pirate at planet number 3. So by no means do I alleged to be a very skillful player, because clearly George and Davis have a radically different idea of what is appropriate to do compared to my own self. But certainly this is a sterling learning opportunity for everybody, and I'm gracious that they allowed me the opportunity to spectate and commentate this game. But we're in the process of resolving command struggles. Planet number 1 is going to be 2 resources for Davis. Planet number 2 is going to be a card for George. Planet 3 is going to be 2 resources for George, whereas Planet 4 is going to be a grand total of 2 resources and a card. Since that Bealtaine Guardian is shut down, that's all going to go to Davis there. And then planet number 5 is going to be an additional card and resource for Davis. In George's hand, he's currently got 2 resources and 4 total cards. He has 1 copy of Archon's Terror. He could use that to remove the Rogue Trader from the first planet if he feels as though that is necessary. Note that Baharroth did end up showing up at Iridial, so he's not going to be able to benefit from removing damage from any units, but he will have the opportunity to remove that copy of Slaaneash's Temptation. And then in regard to Davis's hand here, he's got a copy of Inquisitor Caius Roth, so when that unit enters play, if George has a big surplus of cards in hand, each of our players is going to have to discard down to 4, and then that is going to be Sowing Chaos as well. So if Davis wants, he can trigger this, destroy each and every army unit with printed cost 2 or lower. Interestingly, Davis is able to kind of win that first planet without any contest whatsoever, so the Rogue Trader is going to be able to net him Yavharn, which I can only imagine is going to go not activated. And it's going to be up to George to try to seal the deal on this one. So Iridial is 1, Slaaneash's Temptation is gone. George conserved his copy of Archon's Terror for something much more valuable, but note he's going to have to pay a lot of attention to planet number 1 from this point on, just because Davis can set up any single planet throughout this entire game. It could even be planet number 7, and so long as he's, got units set up there, he's going to be able to do it. So let's see. Karnath, we're seeing a battle. It's of course going to be Zarathur's opportunity to take the first attack. It's going to be up to Zarathur to take a swing, or simply that Rogue Trader. George does not have a Gift of Isha in hand, unfortunately, and there we go. That's going to be Zarathur taking a swing. We do not have a sufficient number of shield cards to save that Bealtaine Guardian, so the Bealtaine Guardians is going to be destroyed. The Rogue Trader is potentially going to be able to continually win command at this planet, with the Rotten Plague Bears having the option of, let's say there's an Incubus Warrior played here, the Rotten Plague Bears can potentially use its action to kill off that enemy unit, and then if it does, as opposed to having a unit exhausted at that planet with no command icons, that Rogue Trader is going to be able to sit there and win command and provide an economy bonus. Davis triggers, of course, his Shrine of Warp Flame. He bounces Tzeentch's Firestorm back to his hand. Interesting how players decide to arrange their cards. Karnath is going to trigger on Planum and move the Rotten Plague Bears to planet number 1. So it looks as though perhaps Davis is going to decide to try to win as early as Iridial. So perhaps he's going to try to bring home the game this following turn. What's a little bit tricky is, again, we'll have to see the Rotten Plague Bears used prior to combat, just because Baharroth could potentially use this Deathly Web Shrine in order to exhaust that unit. So, interesting fair few draws here. Both players, of course, get 4 resources and 2 cards as we move into another HQ phase. The initiative is now, oh god, we see another Rotten Plague Bears played out to planet number 1, so making it very dangerous for Baharroth indeed. But in any case, George now has 2 copies of Archon's Terror to pick and choose 2 units to remove from a planet. He's got another worthless copy of the Deathly Web Shrine. He's got an Incubus Warrior. Very importantly, he has Nullify to cancel an enemy event, like a big expensive Tzeentch's Firestorm, so that's definitely going to be something for Davis to look out for. Sowing Chaos now, all of a sudden looking very bad for Davis indeed, just because he's got 2 2-cost units here, he's got a Rogue Trader here that would die from it as well, and he's also got a Zarathur's Flamers that would be destroyed by it. By the way, our new 5th planet is going to be Farron, if that ends up at all relevant, apart from just command. We see an Incubus Warrior played out to planet number 1, and all of a sudden it's looking slightly too bad that Sowing Chaos, affects both players' units, just because Davis has so many, a grand total of 4 units of his own that would be destroyed by that event, whereas George has 2. But in Davis's hand, he came across a Snakebite Thug, very powerful unit. Davis has an incredible 10 resources in hand. 10 resources on the table, and he can use that Snakebite Thug. If he draws into some units, he'll be able to use Infernal Gateway. Looks like Davis plays Inquisitor Chaos Roth now, so Davis is going to have to discard down immediately. He gets rid of that copy of Sowing Chaos, not terribly useful outside of its shield value. And what exactly is George going to get rid of? Looks as though we also erroneously see Davis put that Sowing Chaos on the bottom of his discard pile, but that's not a big deal whatsoever. It's not as if that is a Tzeentch card. And for George, he gets rid of that useless copy of Deathly Web Shrine, but George has 4 resources left. Davis has 6. Note, Davis has a 3 shield card. He's got a Tzeentch's Firestorm, which could be nullified. He's also got an Infernal Gateway, so hopefully he'll draw Noise Marine Zealot or Zarathur's Flamers, some sort of nasty thing like that. And he'll certainly be able to put his copy of the Snakebite Thug onto this first planet. Note, Archon's Terror is not going to be able to remove Inquisitor Chaos Roth, which is going to prove an immense problem for the opposition here, and if Zarathur shows up at this planet, Archon's Terror not going to be able to remove the Rotten Plaguebearers prior to the combat round, so I'm sure Davis knows full well that his opponent may have 1 or more copies of that effect in hand, and this is looking like it is going to be very much an uphill battle for George if there is absolutely anything he can do to try to win this battle. For instance, Zarathur could show up at planet number 1, Baharroth could show up at planet number 2, then mobile over to planet number 1, the Rotten Plaguebearers could, let's say, potentially kill the Incubus Warrior, wound, or kill off the Hellion Gang, probably just wound, but then the Snakebite Thug is going to be able to attack. It can be Archon's Terrored, but if it is, that's going to be 2 resources that George has spent just to get rid of it. Inquisitor Chaos Roth is a 3/5. George doesn't really have much in the way of shield cards, and rest assured, Davis definitely does, and whether or not we see Nullify, Davis can just wait until Baharroth is exhausted to use Tzeentch's Firestorm, or he can just use his shields, and in either case, there's going to be a mountain of damage going out, and Zarathur's not going to be able to be removed from that planet anytime soon. I just foresee this ending very badly for George, but let's see how things are going to break down. Both of our players are deciding where exactly to send their warlords. I presume Baharroth is going to go to planet number 2, and Davis is going to show up at planet number 1, but let's see how things end up resolved. I'm going to go ahead and check Davis's discard pile. He does not have any Tzeentch trait cards, so Shrine of Warpflame isn't necessarily going to help him out quite yet, but he could use Tzeentch's Firestorm as shields, then he could kill an enemy unit, return that to his hand, then once Baharroth is exhausted, use it to kill an enemy unit, or use it for additional shields just to ensure that Zarathur is going to be able to stay at that planet for as long as possible. It looks like both of our players are doing what I presume they would. Baharroth shows up at planet number 2, and Davis instead arrives at planet number 1. He brings a rogue trader along with him, so planet number 1 looks as though that's going to be 2, 3, 4 command icons relative to 3 command icons, and of course, Zarathur is going to win by default, so why did I even bother calculating? That's going to be a card and a resource at planet number 1 for Davis. It's going to be 2 resources at planet 2 for George. Planet 3 and 4 are going to be a grand total of 2 cards and 3 resources for Davis, and George, it looks like he's going to have no more than 3 one-shield icon cards, so as a command phase action, we see 2 points of damage being dealt out to the Hellion Gang here, mitigated by 1 thanks to the timely discard of an Archon's Terror. Grendel only has 2 resources, so will we see Archon's Terror used to remove something like the Snakebite Thug? Things are looking pretty dangerous indeed. George indicates no command phase action whatsoever, and that's going to be the second Rotten Plaguebearers exhausting, successfully killing off that copy of the Incubus Warrior. Note, Baharroth is going to be able to move to this planet. He's going to be able to exhaust an enemy army unit, non-elite. So Inquisitor Chaos Roth is eligible as a effectively 4/5 because of Zarathur. Snakebite Thug is effectively a 4/4 because of Zarathur. And yes, that's going to be Inquisitor Chaos Roth exhausted. But note, once again, in this very short game, this is going to be 2 different rounds that Davis has had initiative, and this is going to be very important for him and just allow him a sterling opportunity to really seal the deal here. Unfortunately for Davis's sake, even though he's got an abundance of, resources, Infernal Gateway is going to have no better target than this copy of Chaos Fanatics. But as we move into combat at our first planet, I can only imagine that the Snakebite Thug could potentially kill off Autarch Salakia, which is a 3/3 that, okay, looks like Davis spent a mountain of resources. I guess that's going to be 4 resources. Yeah, 5 points of damage dealt out to Autarch Salakia, but he did get, he did manage to nullify that, but Davis has spent a large volume of resources, so Archon's Terror is now used. That Snakebite Thug is going to be banished from the planet, and now let's see, I guess let's just see Zarathur bring this one home. So George doesn't have, oh my god, so I guess, did we have a second copy of Tzeentch's Firestorm? Yeah, we did. Wow, I guess I must have missed it. That is going to be 2 points of damage. 2 resources, making it 3 points of damage thanks to Zarathur's effect, killing Autarch Salakia. George has no cards in hand, so all that Zarathur is going to have to do is take a swing. That means a dead Hellion Gang. No, it looks like that's going to be Tzeentch's Firestorm, and looks like Davis calls out the GG, and that is going to be a dead copy of Hellion Gang. So now all that we can see is Baharroth alone. Grendel has no resources, no cards in hand, and unless our players happen to play it out, yep, there we go. So George basically acknowledges that there is absolutely nothing he can do. So very good game, very well played by both of our players. Congratulations to Davis Kingsley for winning War Master Sam Mann's Black Crusade featured match of the first week. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you to both of our players for allowing me to commentate, record, and capture this match, share it with the viewing public. So thank you at home for watching. I hope you enjoyed this game. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already, or if you are already subscribed, as ever, you're always encouraged to share this content, because the more individuals there are that stumble upon Conquest, the more people may give this game a try, enjoy what they experience, join our community, and of course, all together, we continue to send the message to Fantasy Flight Games, telling them to continue to support this fantastic product. If at any point you'd like to get in touch with me, I would encourage you to do so through Facebook or on Twitter, and if you'd ever feel so inclined to support the Hive Tyrant, I would be absolutely honored were you to make a contribution or donation to my Patreon. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and as always, be sure to check back in again soon for much more Conquest LCG content to come.